So my mama gonna come for a week, my sister gonna come for 2 days, my auntie not coming at all. She gonna see the baby when I go home for Christmas, right? So at the end of the day, you are literally giving birth in a silo by yourself. So the importance of a doula in your community cannot be understated, because that doula will help you understand and connect you to the resources that you need to be able to function more effectively in the postpartum period.
You are now part of a social experiment.
See now where my limit is, only got no ohs. It's like they just wanna see you struggle. I swear they don't wanna see you shine. They don't. It's like they just want you to bleed and they want you to fall. They don't want you to be where the streets are paved with gold.
Welcome to MasterMine, the home of Black excellence and self-mastery. Yes, your host, Mr. G.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us today on the journey towards self-mastery. Welcome to MasterMine University, our monthly segment that challenges the Black mind to think, develop, and grow. Our guest today is a former traveling nurse. She's one of the leading birth experts in the country. She has a bachelor's in nursing from Georgetown University, a master's in nursing, and a concentration in midwifery from Emory University. She has practiced as a midwife in over 4 states and has worked as a labor and delivery nurse in hospitals across the country. She's the founder and CEO of Sista Midwife Productions, which has the largest directory of Black midwives in the country. Essence Magazine calls her the Midwife Shifting the Narrative. Let's welcome today Miss Nicole Deggins to the program. Nicole, happy Mother's Day. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back.
Indeed. The pleasure is ours. And I'm so excited to just talk to you about, motherhood and
all the things.
Yeah, it's so much, man. I can't even pinpoint everything, but these are things I think that we all need to know, as we embark on the journey towards parenting and motherhood and what is going on out there, man. So just to start off with, can you share with those of us that just don't know who you are? Can you talk to them about the work that you do, how you got into this and your philosophy behind all this work?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Nicole. I am here in New Orleans, Louisiana. I am the founder of Sista Midwife Productions. We are a birth justice training and consulting agency based here in New Orleans, Louisiana, but we do work nationwide. I train doulas. I do consulting work, education, all things around Black womanhood, motherhood, birth. I came into the work and originally started off as a labor and delivery nurse back in 1994 and 95, started working as a nurse. 1999, I went to midwifery school. And after midwifery school, I helped open a birth center in DC. I moved to Mississippi and worked as a midwife. And then I began to travel all across the country doing labor and delivery, newborn nursery work just as a nurse. I began to see that no matter where I was, whether it was California, New Hampshire, Michigan, Missouri, Mississippi, Louisiana, it didn't matter where I was. I began to see that the world of labor and delivery and the way that families were treated in the labor and delivery experience was just not good, right? Like even families who were educated and informed, they were being mistreated. They thought they were informed, but they weren't as informed as they needed to be. And I was like, this is garbage, And so I moved back home in 2010, and I knew I wanted to do something to really begin to help shift the paradigm, is what I felt, to help shift the paradigm around how people approach pregnancy and birth. And so I founded Sista Midwife Productions at the end of 2011 and began just doing various programmatic things to elevate our consciousness around birth, pregnancy, parenting, and all of those different things. And I often say a lot of what I come to do, it was based on my community here in New Orleans. Like I never thought to train doulas. That was never like, I'm going to be a doula trainer. But it happened. It became necessary based on what was happening in my community. And so now I do things like this, speak, raise awareness across the country, various different platforms, because unfortunately, even the narrative right now is that Black women are dying, birth is so scary, everything is so horrible. And I really want us to understand that birth is the revolution, right? And if it revolts and we rise up against the status quo and shift the way we think about pregnancy and birth and really embrace birth consciously and pregnancy consciously, we can really change the trajectory of what's happening in our communities.
Mm. Now that is an interesting quote right there. Birth is a revolution. Can you talk about like what you mean by that? Why birth is a revolution in your view?
Yeah, so when we think about revolution, right, we think about revolting. And one of the things that I know is that birth is the conduit to how we become. Everybody's born. Mm-hmm. There is not a person who was here that wasn't born. There is not a person who was here that wasn't conceived. And what I understand is that if we can conceive in a conscious way and birth in a different way and live in a different way, we can. So it's so deep, Mr. G, it's so deep. Like I can't even just answer it so simply, right? Because like there are so many microscopic, small metaphysical changes and things that happen during conception, pregnancy, birth that oftentimes we ignore, right? So one example is oxytocin is one of the most significant hormones of birth. Oxytocin is elevated when we're making love, when we have meals, when we orgasm, when we give hugs to people. Oxytocin is directly connected to our interaction with individuals. Issues with oxytocin, not having enough oxytocin, in oxytocin deficiencies have been connected to social anxiety and interactive disorders and different social anxiety type of diagnoses. And so if we understand that during birth, you will receive the highest amount of oxytocin ever in your life. Your mama is giving it to you and you are receiving it during birth. But when we don't receive this oxytocin because we are being given oxytocin from outside of our systems by way of an IV, because we're not able to breastfeed, because we're not able to hug and touch each other, then we begin to have various disorders in our communities. And so a lot of times people will hear me say these kind of things and kind of get, all is well, right? But when we talk about microcosmic, metaphysical, at the micro level of our human development, we need these hormonal cocktails. We need the oxytocin and the endorphins and the prolactin all working together as a hormonal cocktail to change how we interact, love, and connect with each other. And unfortunately, the way birth is happening right now, we're not receiving. That's one half of it. Mm-hmm. Then if we talk about the womb of the Black woman, and we understand that the entire country that we live in, all of the economics and everything that we live currently in the United States of this country is based on the production of the Black woman's womb right from the beginning. They understood that birth was the revolution. If we can continue to make the Black woman's womb productive for us, we can continue to make this country be what we want it to be. And that's what they did. So if we as Black people, if we as a community, if we as women understand the power of our wombs, and we understand that there are all of these, man, it's deep. I don't know if I made any sense in all of that, but
it made sense. It made sense, definitely. So some people might be hearing the term midwife for the first time or the term doula for the first time.
Yes.
So can you briefly kind of explain those terms, where they come from, and Black people's connection?
Yes, absolutely. So a midwife is a person. So the word midwife means with woman, right? Like if we look at the definition of the word, the etymology of the word midwife, it literally means with women. And so a midwife, medically speaking, is someone who supports a family during birth, prenatally, preconceptually, during the pregnancy period, during the postpartum period for birth. A midwife is a medical provider. If you are a family seeking care for pregnancy and you don't have any healthcare issues, a midwife is the best practitioner for you, because midwives see birth as a normal process of life, and they will care for you. They can take the place of your physician. If you have a midwife, they will see through your whole pregnancy. They are responsible for ensuring the safe passage of that mother and infant from pregnancy into the postpartum period, through labor and the birth into life. A doula is a non-medical provider. So a midwife is a medical provider. They can draw blood, they do medical stuff, they listen to the baby's heart rate, they're doing interventions as necessary, they are paying attention to the health and well-being of their mother and baby to ensure that they will be safe along this journey into motherhood and new life. A doula is non-medical. They're like your sister friend, your auntie, your cousin, your best girlfriend. They provide informational, spiritual, physical, emotional support during your pregnancy, prenatal, and postpartum experience. They are not medical. They are there to be your best friend, your entourage. They are the person who is going to help you ask the right questions, to raise awareness of things that you may not have thought of that you need to ask. Whether you have a midwife or a doctor, a doula is always important. Whether you are high risk or low risk, a doula is imperative. Whether you are medicalized or having a home birth, a doula is helpful. A midwife primarily is going to work with women who are having a low risk pregnancy. And then if they have a high risk pregnancy, that midwife will be in conversation with their consulting physician to ensure the safety and well-being of that mother and that infant.
Got it. So you mentioned earlier that, you've traveled across the country in different hospitals doing this work. And, I'm sure if you were happy, you'd probably still be doing it. So what were some things that you saw kind of in repetition patterns that kind of add on to some of the data behind, Black mothers are 4 times more likely to die during childbirth than any other group. And then the United States itself, when it comes to mothers dying from childbirth, is leading, all industrialized nations in the world. So what did you see that kind of confirms some of these, statistics and data that's happening in these hospitals?
Well, number one, families are not listened to. We're literally not always using evidence-based medicine. We're doing too many inductions. We're doing too many interventions when interventions are not necessary. We're not listening to families when families say, that doesn't feel comfortable to me. That's not something that I want. We're not listening. And I would say those are 2 of the biggest things. We're not listening and we're intervening when we don't need to intervene. One of the things that has happened in our country is that we see pregnancy as an issue, as a medical condition, rather than as a normal part of life, right? So women have periods, women get pregnant, women give birth. All of these various things they can be considered normal parts of the life cycle. Somewhere along the way, we began to want to intervene. A lot of it is financial, right? Because the more we intervene and the more things that we do, whether we do C-sections and use various interventions, those things provide financial incentives for providers. They provide financial incentives, not simply like, I do a C-section, I make more money. It's not that cut and dry, but I can schedule my C-sections, which means I can then schedule my staffing at the hospital. I can schedule the anesthesiologist at the hospital. So it's not simply, I'm scheduling a C-section because it's more money. It's the entire picture of the thing, right? So when we understand that birth is a normal part of the life cycle and we approach it as such, that also means that we must wait and sit in silence and be patient, right? So let's say you plant a seed in the ground. You plant that seed in the ground, you wait for the seed to sprout and give you the oranges of the tree. You're not mad at year 1 when you don't get no oranges, because year 1, you're not supposed to get no oranges. It's a process. But in birth, it's like, it's been 6 hours. We want the baby out and we're looking at the clock. And so a lot of the things that we see is that there are these time constraints that happen to families. And then there is this notion that everybody is potentially high risk. So we have to be very careful, because if something happens, we're going to be liable, right? Whereas in midwifery, we just see and we understand that birth is a normal part of the life cycle. If you're 5'2", nothing wrong with that. If you're 6'2", there's nothing wrong with that. All of it is normal. But in labor and birth, all of a sudden, if you 5 hours, that's too fast. If you're 12 hours, that's too slow, right? Like we have all of these labels unnecessarily that we put on families, on the birthing woman, that like interferes with her ability to just be. And no matter where I was in the country, like I would see people come into the hospital to have their babies, And even when labor and birth was going along normally, there were still interventions happening. Like you breaking her water for no reason. You're starting medications for no reason. You're encouraging her to get an epidural, even when she's telling you she don't want one. You're almost forcing her to do these things that she doesn't want. And they do it in such a way. They're very like slick with it, right? Because what happens is they use the language of this could happen to your baby, or this is not normal. And everybody wants their baby to be healthy. Everybody wants a live baby. Everybody's concerned about a live mama. And so if you say to me, do this, or you can have these consequences, then you're going to pull back. And so that's what I saw. So there were people who were educated and they knew that they didn't want extra interventions. They knew that they didn't want to have things happen to them that were unnecessary. But when you begin to use what I call the dead baby card, or you begin to threaten or make me feel uncomfortable and I don't know, then you're going to start backtracking on what you really want because you assume that the physician, the nurses know better.
Got you. All right. So one of the phenomena too that's happening across hospitals, we've seen it with Serena Williams. You know, I have my own personal stories with my family. I know a lot of people that I've spoken to about this topic as well. This whole ideology of Black women, you know, not feeling as much pain. And, you know, doctors and nurses have this mindset of still, you know, that Black women don't feel as much pain. They don't need as much medicine and certain things like that. And I know in a previous lecture, you talked about father of gynecology, Marion Sims. Let's
not call him that, but let's just say Marion.
I put that in quotes. Okay. I put that in quotes. Okay. But he kind of started this philosophy with Black women not feeling pain. So I know you've covered him before in previous lectures and things like that. So for those that don't know, can you kind of share a little bit about him and how we got from his work to kind of where we are now?
Yeah. So J. Marion Sims was a physician who practiced in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and he did a lot of experimental surgeries, particularly around repairing fistulas and different gynecological surgeries. And he would do these surgeries, particularly there are three women, Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy, that we call the mothers of gynecology, who were really tortured over the course of years, multiple surgeries, where he did these surgeries and he was like, even though anesthesia and medications were available, he did not allow these women or give these women anesthesia because they're slaves. They don't need any surgery. But you also understand, and we think about cognitive dissonance, and we understand that the people who were enslaving and the colonizers and the Caucasians who were doing this work at the time, it was necessary for them to dehumanize. It was necessary to dehumanize Black women in order for them to do the things that they did, because otherwise, how could you do what you did? So he basically tortured them and did multiple surgeries on them to protect his surgical techniques. And as he did these things, his excuse was they don't need anesthesia because Black women don't feel pain. Unfortunately, that continues to this day. They have continued the research where medical students are still taught. They're still taught Black skin is thicker. If you have dark skin, your skin is thicker. That is still, I've not been in a school where they say that outright, but there is this theory, this underlying assumption and theory that darker skin is thicker, right? There is also an assumption that happens, and this is not connected to that in the same way, but when we think about the demographics and the socioeconomics and the social patterns of the United States, when Black people are asking for pain medicine, they're drug seeking. She's not in pain, she's drug addict. Just wants pain medicine. Right? So that's another piece of that same conversation. So I'm in pain and I can't get pain medicine because all of a sudden I'm drug seeking, rather than I actually just had a big surgery where you cut through my skin and my fascia and my fat and my muscle and my organs. And you went down like 4 layers through my body. And so, yes, it would make sense that I'm in pain, but no, somehow I'm drug seeking rather than in pain. And so there's this combination, and I think that the crack cocaine epidemic really pushed that narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have the J. Marion Sims, which Black people don't feel pain, and you combine that with the crack cocaine epidemic, where all crackheads and drug seeking, and you put them together. We don't need no pain medicine, and we don't need to listen to us because we're just complaining. And we just want something. We're just trying to eat off the system. We're just trying to gain something from the system. And that's kind of the trajectory that we've been on since then.
So just listening in with this now, like I'm getting this information right now for the first time ever. And, my wife is pregnant, or, I'm in a position where I'm getting ready to have a child. Like, how do I minimize my child's, the chances of some of these things occurring to my wife, to my family in the hospital setting?
So the first thing is to just continue to get informed, right? So choose a midwife if you can, if there's a midwife in your community. Generally speaking, midwives are more holistic. They're going to treat you differently. They're going to hear differently. They're going to respect you differently. They're going to communicate with you differently, number one. Always have a doula on board, because the doulas are out here fighting a good fight and making sure that your wishes are being heard, what you're looking for. They're like an extra voice, and they have inside information that you may or may not have. At the end of the day, the answer is education, for real. Education, ask questions, don't take the first answer. They say no, you say why not? They say no again, you say why not? Is that like, you just have to be, and don't be afraid to buck the system. Don't wait till the last minute. And you know what, Mr. G, I'm gonna say this. Don't wait till you're pregnant. Don't wait till you're pregnant. You got married yesterday, start investigating and understand birth options today. Watch the business of being born today. Not tomorrow. Don't wait till you get pregnant. Start researching and understanding these things today. Start talking to your friends who just had a baby now, so that when you get pregnant in a year, you already have some understanding. I always laugh about the fact that when I got pregnant, the number one thing I had to think about was which pack and play I was going to buy. And as I was experimenting and investigating the pack and play, I was overwhelmed with the pack and play decision. And I thought to myself, my God, I know I'm breastfeeding. I know I'm having a home birth, which I didn't. I ended up delivering in the hospital. But in my mind, I know I'm breastfeeding. I know I'm having a home birth. I know I have a midwife. I know I have a doula. All I got to worry about is the car seat and the pack and play. I was overwhelmed with the car seat and pack and play decision. So what I say to people is, get your important information first. Stop worrying about a gender reveal. And how the nursery, what colors you're gonna put in the nursery. That shit don't mean nothing. Don't nobody care what color the nursery is. Your baby could care less about the color of the nursery. Your baby don't care what color onesie they got. Your baby don't care about none of that stuff. Your baby just wants you here, healthy and whole. We worried about the wrong things. We worried about the wrong things. And so I think now, as I'm even answering it here, the number one thing I would say is don't wait till you're pregnant. Just like if you're going to buy a house, you went to a first-time home buyer program. You researched interest rates. You went to the bank and you found 5 or 6 different banks and you looked at different loan options before you made an agreement. Before you went to college, you was a junior in high school taking your SAT and your SAT and your ACT and your SAT and getting all things. And you decide, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be without these things. You didn't think about, you don't wake up tomorrow and decide I'm gonna be a lawyer. You don't think that. You've been thinking about this for 5 years. And half of y'all go to law school and then you don't even really want to be a lawyer anyway at the end of this conversation. So in pregnancy, don't wait until you're pregnant. Don't wait until you're pregnant.
That makes sense.
So particularly for the women out there listening, men, it's a rumor in the streets that men don't get pregnant until the woman is already 4 months pregnant because he can't feel it. His body is not changing. So by the time he connects to the pregnancy, she's already 4 or 5 months in. But so for the women out there, it is so important to be just like you thinking about where you're about to go get your next braids. You know how much research people do for braids? Girl, who did your braids? How much they cost? How long it took? It was 2 people or 3 people got in your head. You know, we have these conversations a month or 2 before you even go get your done. In that same vein, we must understand the importance of this pregnancy thing and ask these questions way, way, way before we even get pregnant.
Well said, man. Along the lines of what you're saying too, eliminating some of the things that we really don't need. I know you've mentioned adding some of the things that we don't even realize that we need, specifically, you know, in different parts of Africa, different parts of the Caribbean. There are things that are done differently than, you know, in the West. So what have you seen that is worthy of adding to that toolkit of birthing and raising children that you see in different parts of Africa and the Caribbean?
I cannot speak on different parts of Africa or the Caribbean because I have not been there. Well, I've been to Caribbean, but not to Africa yet. But I'm going this year. So excited. But I don't know their birth practices. What I can say is things that we need are, number one, a postpartum plan. A lot of times, even those of us who are educated, we're educated about birth. And we know that, okay, I want the birth to happen this way, but we forget the postpartum plan. So equip yourself with the things that you need in the postpartum period, whether that is food, whether that is childcare, whether that's a housekeeper, whether that is support, whatever that looks like. So that's important. Equipping yourself with a doula. Like, a doula cannot be underestimated. The value of a doula. It is unfortunate that now we have the need for a doula. There was a time in community that your mother, your auntie, your sister, whoever played that role. But currently, the way the scenario is I live in New Orleans, but I grew up in Michigan. My people live in Michigan. My sisters, my mama, my aunties, they all in Michigan. I went to Xavier University. Now I live in New Orleans. I don't have nobody here except a few girlfriends. So my mama gonna come for a week. My sister gonna come for 2 days. My auntie not coming at all. She gonna see the baby when I go home for Christmas, right? So at the end of the day, you are literally giving birth in a silo by yourself. So the importance of a doula in your community cannot be understated, because that doula will help you understand and connect you to the resources that you need to be able to function more effectively in the postpartum period. I think about financially, right? A lot of people, we are the only westernized country in the world who does not have any sort of required maternal leave. So you're about to have a baby, and in 6 weeks, they want you back at it, shucking and jiving. But I promise you, in 6 weeks, you're not going to be ready to shuck and jive. So what can you do when you are 20 weeks pregnant, 30 weeks pregnant, 34 weeks pregnant, to begin to shift the narrative so that you don't have to go back to work at 6 weeks? Whether you're married and that means, okay, babe, we about to live on one salary for the next 3 months. Because if you live on one salary for 3 months, that means now you can live on one salary for 6 months. You understand what I'm saying? And so now you can stay home with your baby a little bit longer. Maybe that means not worrying about, I've talked to families who would say things like, well, we want to pay off the car so when the baby comes, we don't have that debt. Don't pay off the car right now, because you want to stay home with your baby. And if you're paying off the car, that means you're not saving no money. Sometimes it ain't about paying off the car. It might be about putting that money in the bank. So when a baby is home, it's about negotiating with your employer. And now is a great time to negotiate all of these things around working from home and working part-time and working part-time remote, understanding what are my options? How can I not go back to work full-time immediately? So I can't really say Caribbean and Africa. I could tell you what's happening in the United States. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't go back to work full-time at 6 weeks postpartum. Figure out how you can do that. Maybe you bring in, I was talking to a woman one time who was telling me about the money she was paying for her 2 infants to go to this top-notch daycare. And it was stressful. And I'm like, you realize you could get somebody to come to your house to do that? And she was like, man, I never thought about that. So she was paying all of this money, waking up every day to bring her children to daycare. And I'm like, you could pay somebody that same amount of money to come to your house to take care of both of your children and they might even wash dishes and fold laundry. So like really beginning to think about how can we shift our expectations of what we need in the postpartum period.
Man, that is definitely something to think about. I think a lot of us don't think like that when it comes to, making those shortcuts and putting the child needs first, because we think that paying the bills is part of the child's needs first and doing certain things. So thank you for adding that.
Listen, there are people going back to work, and they go back to work and they are literally just making enough money to barely pay for childcare.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's deep. It's crazy. Oh, man.
Yeah, man. Another thing I want to get into, I want to get into questions from the audience. So if anybody has questions, you can ask Nicole a question, or I think, it's important for us to share our stories as well. So that, whoever it is experiencing the pregnancy now can have an idea of what to expect, in a hospital setting and how to respond to certain situations. So if you want to add in a story, maybe from you or that you've heard in the hospital setting, you can do that. Or if you have a specific question for Nicole, you can do that as well. So do we have any questions, listeners?
I'm happy to take questions. If there's a question on Instagram that you want to ask, I'm happy to take the question.
I have a question. Good evening, everyone. So there is one of the trends that I've noticed, right, is more children with autistic traits. I don't know, like children on the spectrum. For some reason, I see that like it's so prevalent. Like, it's like every other friend I know has a child that's on the spectrum, and it looks like it's so common now. And I'm curious to know, based on your own experiences, like what can you speak on that for a minute? Like just educate me on that, or educate us rather on that. What are we doing differently that wasn't done in the past, or what are we eating? I mean, I'm just curious, like, do you have any information on that subject, please?
Let me first preface this by saying this is the opinions of Nicole Deggins, Sista Midwife, and this ain't got nothing to do with the research and what nobody else clinical or medical has said. And we got a question from Trisha in the IG, so we can ask that in a second and answer that in a second also. When I talk about birth is revolution, and I mentioned that there are certain hormonal cocktails that are very important to the development of our brains and our development and our connections, oxytocin is key in our social interaction. If you begin to do research into autism and what they call fringe research, you will find that there is information that is connecting oxytocin as a treatment for autism. So oxytocin is one of the most important hormones connected to social interaction, connected to love, connected to communication. The number one time that you receive the most pertinent oxytocin that you would ever receive in your life is during pregnancy and birth. And so when we use something called Pitocin, Pitocin, which is synthetic oxytocin, then that means your personal body doesn't have the ability to give or receive true hormonal oxytocin. And so there's no real research that shows that inductions with synthetic oxytocin and using synthetic oxytocin immediately postpartum is connected to autism. But what we do know is that oxytocin and low levels of oxytocin are connected to social communication disorders. And I'm not using the right terminology right now. I'm at a loss for words, but just social anxiety and interaction with people, communicating with people is directly connected to our oxytocin. And so when we have inductions at 38 weeks, when it don't need to happen, we are limiting and cutting off our ability to get the oxytocin that we need from our mamas. That's real. We know that synthetic oxytocin, also called Pitocin, is connected to postpartum depression. So when you get Pitocin, whether it's in labor or in the postpartum period, you're more likely to have postpartum depression. So that is connected to an issue. And so when I think about autism, I always look at it as a continuum. So I like to talk about conscious conception to constant pregnancy. Conscious parenting. Conscious conception to conscious parenting. So worst case scenario, you didn't want to get pregnant, you got pregnant. Now you're pregnant. You go through your whole pregnancy unhappy, aggravated, frustrated, angry with him, not celebrating. You're not sending no love to your baby. Your hormones are all over the place. Then you have a baby. You have your baby with Pitocin under induction. You're disconnected from the experience. You end up with a cesarean section. The normal hormonal cocktail that the universe created for you to have this baby are disjointed. It is not working effectively. Then you don't breastfeed, so now you don't have the prolactin. You don't have no more oxytocin, because oxytocin is also connected to breastfeeding, and you have waves of oxytocin that happens with breastfeeding. So now you are not breastfeeding. Then you give your baby dye red, dye 5, dye, all these different red and blues and dyes, right? Then you give your baby all these different vaccines. It's not one thing. It's a combination, assault after another. That's my opinion. Now, I have no facts, sis. I was going to say that. I did all the research for all these various pieces of it, but I believe that it is a continuum from conscious conception to conscious parenting. So we're not conceiving consciously, we are not pregnant consciously, we are not birthing consciously, we are not parenting consciously. And so the normal hormonal cocktails, the normal foods, all of the things, so it's all of the things, it's not just one thing. It is all of the things collectively that I believe are connected to this increase in autism.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense right there. Just some things to think about, like how we can improve, one thing at a time so we can minimize some of these things from occurring. Tricia had a question. If someone is not insured and has to pay out of pocket, how do they engage with midwives? What is your cost?
Yeah, what is the cost range? So if you are in a state, well, all states have nurse midwives, right? So you can go to the hospital with your Medicaid and you can get a nurse midwife. Sometimes it is difficult to find a nurse midwife because depending on where you are and how the practice is set up, the nurse midwife may not be listed directly. If you don't have Medicaid, get Medicaid. Let me tell you something. Don't run away from Medicaid. Get Medicaid. If you can't get, why you can't get Medicaid, get it. We could talk offline about why you don't have Medicaid if it's like a thing, right? But I'm like, go apply for Medicaid. Just out of pocket, you're going to pay $5,000 out of pocket. That's what it is. A midwife is going to cost anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 on average out of pocket. That's what they're going to cost. That's for home births. That's for birth center births. If you are doing a hospital birth, you're looking at $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. Wow. If you're doing home birth or a birth center birth, a midwife is going to cost you out of pocket anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000, even maybe $10,000. But if you, I'm like, get Medicaid, get it, go apply for it. And that's the thing, y'all. Even if you think you don't qualify, go apply, because a lot of states have they extend the amounts of money that you can make and still qualify for Medicaid. So don't, we got this thing in our heads, and I'm not saying, sis, that whoever asked the question, I'm not saying that that's your issue, but there are a lot of people who are like, I don't want no Medicaid. Baby, go get your Medicaid. You got a job, you've been put into the system, go get your Medicaid. Let them pay for this baby to come through here. They'll pay for it. Sometimes they'll pay for your prenatal care, as an example. They might not pay for the birth, but they'll pay for the prenatal care. You'll be able to get your lab. So like, let's say the midwife fee is $6,000, but of that $6,000, there's another $1,500 that's labs and ultrasounds and going to get, different various things inside the system. The Medicaid will pay for that. So I encourage everybody, if you do not have private insurance and you are pregnant, apply for Medicaid. If you get denied, I'm sorry, that's a whole nother conversation. But there are a lot of people who can qualify for Medicaid who do not apply for it, either A, because of stigma and they don't want to apply for it, or B, because they think they cannot qualify. Do not assume you cannot qualify. When you are pregnant, the qualifications shift, and you may very well be able to qualify for Medicaid. So definitely go apply. But a midwife is going to cost you, if she is a home birth midwife, if she's an independent midwife, she's going to cost you anywhere from $3,000, $6,000, $8,000 out of pocket. If she is a hospital-based midwife, then you're looking at all the hospital fees. And if you don't have insurance, the only logical thing is to get Medicaid, honestly, or to get insurance. That didn't answer your question. You have a follow-up you want to ask, feel free.
Thank you for that. I had no idea it was that expensive, man. Wow. Oof.
It can't. Now, let me also say this, though. There are a lot of people who are like, well, I have private insurance and I just want to have a home birth, but I can't afford it. What I have also come to learn is sometimes with private insurance, by the time you pay your co-pays and by the time you pay your, your deductibles, you could have paid for a home birth midwife, because a home birth midwife might be $5,000. And I have talked to families who have had a hospital bill of $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, because in their mind, the insurance doesn't pay for a home birth. So I'm going to go ahead and use my insurance. But by the time they pay all the co-pays and all of the hospital bills, they still end up $5,000, $6,000 out of pocket. Some midwives will take payment plans. So just seek it out. And that's another reason why you cannot wait until you're pregnant to seek out this information. That's another thing. You just got married, girl, get your savings account just to support your midwife and your doula. Get your savings account.
The things I wish I knew, man. All right. So somebody wanted to know, what's your best advice to give to a first-time mom?
Get educated before you get pregnant. If you're already pregnant, hire a doula. Let me speak on this too, Mr. G, because last time we talked, I couldn't reveal this information, but I can reveal it now because it's no longer secret. So Sista Midwife is now in partnership with Baby Dove, and we have the largest Black doula directory. It's called blackdouladirectory.com. Not Black doula, that's not what it's called. It is called, it's called,
Take your time.
Oh my God, what is the website? Jesus, help me. I'm about to pull it up right now so I don't lie to y'all. But blackdouladirectory.com, that is what it is. Put it in the chat right there, blackdouladirectory.com, right? So my number one advice is get you a doula and get you a midwife and get educated. Take childbirth education class. A lot of times people don't take a childbirth education class. Take a childbirth education class. Read some books. Go to school. Go to school. Don't just think your mama, your sister, your nanny and them have the information. Go to school about this pregnancy thing, y'all. That's my number one advice. Get educated. Learn your options. Watch some documentaries. The Business of Being Born. I realized just recently they are at their 15-year anniversary. The Business of Being Born is one of the best documentaries I feel like ever created to give information holistically about giving birth in the hospital and in the medical industrial complex. Watch that documentary. Write down your questions. Don't wait until you're 20 weeks pregnant to have a thing. Get started today. You don't have time. Yesterday was too late. Soon as you get pregnant, it's already too late. So my real advice is to get this information before you're pregnant. But if you're a first-time mom and you're already pregnant, do the best you can. Don't go out. Don't go out to eat. Don't stay after work. Don't go to no football games. Be at your computer, at your house, reading books, getting educated, period. That's it. That's all you need to be doing for the next 9 months, getting educated about this pregnancy thing. Go to childbirth education class and so forth.
Appreciate that. Does anybody have a verbal question, or we tap into some more messages here?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Andre Bell. I appreciate the forum here, Sista Nicole. I just want to kind of comment on what you're talking about, information. Of course, information is powerful, and it's our most important asset. So my thing is that with healthcare, Me being, a hard worker, going to work, having health care, having insurance. I go to the doctor a lot. As a man, they say black men don't go to the doctor, but I go exclusively. I'm at the doctor all the time for anything. I don't care what it is. So in my experience, when I do go to the doctor, first thing they ask me, or first thing I do when I put the call in to get an appointment, who is your insurance provider? And if I don't say the right insurance provider, and sometimes they'll say, we don't take that carrier. So it's going to come up, and then you got to know, okay, this is if you do have insurance, what do you do when they say they don't take your insurance? Fortunately, when I do mine, they always take it. But I know for a fact that a lot of insurances are denied. And definitely something with, when you're talking about pregnancies, you're talking about going to get holistic. On that level, it changes the game because a lot of times the insurances don't cover holistic care. So with me, I happen to be connected to a network, and it's called Impact Health Share. So this is for people who may have insurance, but it doesn't cover holistic, or somebody who has insurance, but when they go to their doctor, they say, no, we don't cover you for certain things. But Impact Health Share, reason why I say that, because first of all, they're 30 to 70% savings. It's called Impact, IMPACT. You can look it up, Google Impact Health Share. One of the things about Impact is that, and I'm not trying to make this a commercial, I'm just trying to give people information. Impact is a non-for-profit. And what makes them special is they don't have to go by the government guidelines, because the government is always connected to all these insurance companies. That's why they're so high, because the government's got their hand in the pot. So if you're looking for additional insurance, or you have no insurance, or say if you're self-employed, right? You don't have no insurance because your job doesn't provide it, because there's a lot of us that don't have a job. So now you can look into these kind of insurances. It's called health sharing, not health insurance. It's been around for 20 something years. A lot of people don't know about it because everybody just, been told that you have to have health insurance. But this is health share. And all it is people helping to pay other people's insurance bills. Okay, so that's important for me to get out. I have information on it. If anybody has, wants some more information about that Impact Health Share, they can contact me. They can go to Pascal and get my phone number, and I can reach them into the right direction for that. The other thing had to ask about is, and you mentioned on a little bit about, I was talking to a sister, and she was telling me about her granddaughter who was perfectly normal when she was born. And she probably about up to 1, she was laughing, crying, sitting up, playing. Everything was normal about her. She was talking, laughing. I mean, not talking, but, making sounds. And she was laughing, everything. And then she had to go get her immunizations. And she said right after that, something happened. And then now she has autism. But in the beginning, this baby was perfectly normal. So we got to be careful. She said that there was a law, I think, where your child had to have all these vaccinations when they were born. I think they took it away where now you can refuse, but they did it automatically. They just gave your child, your baby, all the vaccinations at one time, like multiple, 5, 6 vaccinations. That could do damage to anybody. Like sister was saying, it's multiple things that are going on. But just think about that one thing. You have a perfectly healthy child, and all of a sudden they give them 5 vaccinations in one time, and the baby's not even 1 year old yet. What damage that could do to a baby. So I just want to, let people know that. And now, she's 13 years old. She still has autism, but that probably could have been prevented if they refuse those vaccinations. So let me get back to you, Parker. Thanks for letting me speak.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that, Andre.
Can I
Yeah, you can respond, Nicole. Yep.
Yeah. So one thing, thank you. I'll look up Impact Health Share. Certainly, I don't think insurance is the answer, particularly for pregnancy care, And like I said, even if you have insurance, the amount that you're going to pay out of pocket for a home birth is going to be the same, even with your insurance. So you might as well look into it. Home birth and birth center birth, it could be the same insurance or not. Always look into other options. Start saving now. When you get married, when you have a baby shower, when you have a gender reveal that you do not need, when you have people buying you packing plays and all the shit that you don't need, stop buying all of that shit and have your people invest in helping to pay for your midwife and your doula, period. You do not need nothing. All you need is a breast and a blanket and a onesie. You don't even need a onesie unless it's wintertime and you're somewhere where it's cold. Because if it's cold in New Orleans, you can put your baby on your chest and your baby's gonna be warm by you. So my point is, we do not need half of the things that we buy for a newborn baby that people buy. Save your money on those things and invest in the care that you need. Number two, I always say it like this because, I be trying not to be too controversial, but my baby is unvaccinated. She's 8 years old. She ain't had now one vaccine. She not finna get no vaccine because I have concerns about the health and safety of vaccines. What I also know is that it's a very individualized choice for a family to make. And what I say is do your research. The big issue is people go to public schools and public schools require vaccines. Every state has different rules and regulations about how you can or cannot refuse vaccines. Louisiana, where I live, is one of the only states that still has what we call conscientious objection, where you could just literally be like, we just don't want no vaccine because we conscientiously object to the vaccine. Most states have other states have their religious objections, and it's conscious objection, religious objection, and there's one other thing. And then, of course, if you have allergies, it's tough. We live in a police state. A lot of people like to think we in the land of the free, the home, the brave. We not. We live in a country that is a police state, and so it is what it is. So you will have to get into your Facebook groups, get into the communities that understand the ways to fight these various things that you may or may not be in agreement with. So like I said, I know in Louisiana, we have conscientious objections. So, and my daughter is homeschooled, but I'm very clear. This is information that you need to be talking about when you 18, 19, 20, 21, 15, 16, 17, before you even think about having a baby. One thing I did skip, brother, I forgot to mention this advice for a new mom: never go to an appointment by yourself.
That's a good one.
Never go to an appointment by yourself. I don't care if it's your sister, your girlfriend, your husband, your mama, your boo, your nan. I don't care who goes with you. Always bring somebody with you. Somebody who can hear what you don't hear. Somebody who can ask what you're not asking. Somebody who can just stand up and be like, not on my watch, I'm paying attention. Always bring a notebook. Always write down what they say. If they're saying something, they're talking too fast, be like, hold up, I didn't understand. One of the things, like a lot of people talk about doulas, and I'm all for a doula. At the end of the day, though, the doula is not the golden ticket. You have to be willing and able to say, no, I have a question. I didn't hear you. I didn't understand. Write it down. How do I spell it? The mama got to be willing to do that. The doula can't do everything. You got to be willing to ask the question, to write it down, and to challenge these people. You got to be willing to challenge them. If you're not willing to challenge them, they're going to run over you. You have to be willing to challenge them. You have a right to challenge them. You pay their bills. They don't pay your bill. You pay their bill. They are your employee. But you have to be willing to stand up and to ask the question unapologetically, to challenge them. And the issue is when you're pregnant, I've been there. As a midwife, 20 years experience, pregnant with my daughter, I almost got hoodwinked and bamboozled, I promise you. I snuck out of that office with that midwife, and I was like, oh my gosh, she almost got me in the jugular. And I got to my car and I just burst into tears because she was like trying to force me out. She was trying to force me to take an ultrasound that I didn't want. And she was manipulating my mind. When you're pregnant, you just be like, and I was at the appointment by myself. Never go to the appointment by yourself. Always bring somebody with you. COVID got people COVID messed over some people. A lot of people, because during COVID, they wasn't letting people in. So you was in there by yourself. And when you're in these appointments by yourself and you're pregnant, man, they getting you. They getting you. It's terrible.
Man, that's sage wisdom, man. Thank you for that, Nicole. Man, I wish I had you like 10 years ago. Oh, man. All right. Somebody wanted to know, well, actually, somebody said during pregnancy, you can be covered for at least 60 days after you give birth, depending on your state. Interesting.
Yeah, and actually it's up to a year now. Now they have Medicaid expansion up to a year, and insurance expansion up to a year. It's just that's the thing. I said this, I was on a panel at a national conference. This is like a federal people conference a few weeks ago, and the question was talking about midwives. And how can we get midwives coverage one-on-one? And I was like, the problem in the United States is every state have their own rules, policies, and regulations, right? We don't have no national insurance. We don't have no national medical policies. So state by state, everything is different. And so a lot of times when I do calls like this and people ask me questions, I'm like, it depends on where you live. Depends on where you live. So like the person on the Samsung is saying up to 60 days. And, Louisiana now is up to, depending on where you live, it's up to a year. Like they're trying to really, and then I'm also thinking about Medicaid. You might be talking about private insurance. That's another thing, y'all. Even if you have private insurance, don't mean you can't get Medicaid. Let me tell you something. I'm saying this because I was one of those people. We turn our nose up at Medicaid because we have, what is the word? We have a stigma attached to the projects, to Medicaid, to food stamps. We have a stigma attached to all that shit. Get your Medicaid, man. Get your food stamps too. Baby, get it. Don't run away from that shit. You ready to get yourself. Get it. You done had a job. You done worked in this country. Because guess what? When it comes time for you to retire, you ain't gonna get nothing. Ain't nothing gonna be left when it comes to retirement. If you could get Medicaid and food stamps, get it while you can get it. Get it while you can get it. Medicaid saved me while I was pregnant, and my baby still got Medicaid, and I'm not ashamed to say it, but I was ashamed of it 10, 15, 20 years ago because Medicaid was for them. Get your Medicaid. Even if you have private insurance, sometimes you can still get Medicaid to supplement. So then all of a sudden, your $6,000 deductible turns into $2,000. I know sometimes you're ineligible. Sometimes you are ineligible. I'm ineligible too right now. I can't get no more food stamps. But I'm saying there are a lot of people who are not ineligible who won't apply because of the stigma or because they think that they're no longer. In fact, I was at a conference last Friday. Friday just passed. They had a presentation on food insecurity. And they talked about how here in Louisiana, the threshold for food stamps has doubled. So instead of being like 180% of poverty, now it's like 200 and something percent of poverty. People don't know. Always just apply, just try, just see. You never know. You never know. And even if it's $50 a month, if it's $50 a month and it took you 1 hour to fill out the application, and now for 6 months, you get $50 of food stamps, that's $300. You don't make $300 an hour at your job. Fill out the application. Just see. Just try. Just see.
Appreciate that, Nicole. Appreciate that. I thought I saw somebody with their hand up, but I guess not.
No, she was clapping.
Oh, clap. It was a clap. Indeed. All right. Somebody had a question about your opinion. I know you mentioned you just have opinions on the vaccine part. Just your opinion as a medical, somebody who is informed medically. What do you think is ideal spacing for people that make the decision of getting the vaccinations? Like, what do you think is a good space of time to get them?
Yeah, so I can't give a good spacing time because there's so many vaccines. But what I would say is there is no need to get all of them at one time. So one of the things, there's a book. So let me think. I wish I had these questions beforehand. There is a documentary series called The Truth About Vaccines. Watch it. And in that documentary, there are physicians who are not anti-vaccine. They are not anti-vaccine. In fact, they encourage vaccines, but they also there are alternative schedules. There are alternative schedules where you're not giving so many vaccines at one time. And there are also schedules where you are, you're spacing the vaccines and then you can separate them out. A lot of what happens with the vaccines is one shot and they have like 3 or 4 vaccines in them. And so what they'll say to you is, you don't want your baby to get 4 different shots. We're going to give them 1 shot with all the vaccine. And you can be like, nah, my baby good. She can get 4 shots, right? So it's like just making those decisions. It's making those decisions to determine how you want to go to get the vaccines. And I wish I knew the book off the top of my head. There's a pediatrician who wrote a book who gives a very research-based, well-educated, well-thought-out vaccine schedule that is not the typical schedule. I will also, so I would say just research it. I want to say it's called the vaccine book. I apologize, I don't have the name because I wasn't expecting this part of the conversation, so I didn't pull it up. But The Truth About Vaccines is a documentary series that you can locate. And in that documentary series, there's 2 physicians, 2 pediatricians who wrote the vaccine book. They are not, that be the thing. It's people like not anti-vaccine. They're just saying we don't have to give 20 vaccines at one time. In addition to that, what I will say is I 1000%, I am vehemently against hepatitis B vaccine in newborns for a long time. I say this in my doula training. I've been a nurse for a long time. And I remember going to California as a travel nurse and they give me all this stuff. And so when the baby's born, you're going to give the erythromycin, you're going to give the vitamin K, and you're going to give the hepatitis B vaccine. And I was like, why am I giving the hepatitis B vaccine? Literally, the answer is because it's a part of the series. There is nothing necessary. There is literally, if your mama is not hepatitis B, don't got hepatitis B, which by the way, hepatitis B is transmitted like HIV, sexual contact, bloodborne. If the mama don't have hepatitis B and the daddy don't have hepatitis B and nobody in the house have hepatitis B, how on earth would the baby be exposed to hepatitis B? Why would a newborn need a hepatitis B vaccine? I was like, wait, I'm really confused at why I'm giving this to the newborn. It had me messed up. I was very disgusted and disturbed by the fact that we were giving a newborn baby 1 hour out of the vagina a hepatitis B vaccine. You can decline that shit. Decline that all day. Do not let your newborn baby receive a hepatitis B vaccine. I'm going to say that. I don't speak a lot on my opinions on vaccine because everybody has to make their own decisions. But I will say that because you can get the hepatitis B vaccine later. When they're a year old, 6 years old, 5 years old, it don't matter. How would they get hepatitis B if nobody in your house have hepatitis B? Wow, it don't make no sense. There's nothing about it that makes sense. Nothing. Zero. So I will say that.
Thank you for that, Nicole. I feel like sometimes we just don't know. Like, we're in the hospital.
We just don't know.
Doctors are like, well, they need this, they need that, they need this, they need that.
Okay.
And doctor knows best. I'm all right. Let's make it happen. I want my baby to be healthy, to be safe. So we're not aware. Like, I think that's a great point about.
Ellie is saying Dr. Sears. I don't think it's not Dr. Sears because Dr. Sears is the old head.
Yes.
The vaccine book is a different person, but look it up. Fine, you can find them.
Yeah, somebody was saying it could be Dr. Sears with the vaccine book, but you're saying it's not. All right. Along with what you're saying with the vaccines, my wife and I, when we were pregnant with our first child, we went into the city for she must have been like 3 or 4 or 5 months in. And I talked to you about this before. And one of the doctors, that was there during our meeting recommended that she do a vaccination through the womb. Like, I've never heard about this until that point in time. And, luckily we understood, like, that sounds crazy. Like, why would we vaccinate our child through the womb? Like, like it just made no sense.
I
So
never even heard of that.
yeah, so we refused it. Doctor was looking at us crazy, like, what's wrong with y'all? Like, don't you want to protect your baby, kind of thing. And it just didn't make sense, man. And I'm like, why would
Let me ask this question. Was it worded in the sense that the mama should get the vaccine because then the vaccine from the mom will transfer to the baby and give the baby vaccination? Was it like that? Or was it?
I don't remember. The only thing I remember is that they wanted to inject it through in the belly,
Really? Like they were gonna give an injection into the belly?
Yeah. And I was just like,
I never heard of that. I never heard of that.
Yeah, this sounds really wild. I'm like, like we both looked at each other like, nah, this is crazy. Like we never went there again, man. But I would imagine that I would imagine that some people did that. You know what I'm saying? That just was like, all right, well, doctor knows best,
And that's another piece of advice. If you have a provider who's giving you information that feels uncomfortable and you push back a little bit, and that doctor is not willing to hear or help you understand why they're saying or give you research or like really communicate and give you the ability to accept and refuse that treatment, that's a red flag. You need to be looking for another provider. If your provider don't touch you, if you're pregnant, your doctor should be touching your belly. I've heard stories of women being pregnant, going to the doctor, and the doctor, they 7 months pregnant, doctor never touched them. If your doctor not touching you, that's a problem. You need a new doctor.
All right. Interesting. I didn't know that about doctors not touching you. This is why we need people in the medical field, because that might be something that people just don't experience, doctors touching them. But that's interesting. I didn't know that. All right.
I mean, I don't know, Renee. I mean, I know amniocentesis for a genetic workup, that's a whole different thing, though. You got to have all sorts of reasons for them to do an amniocentesis. That's not a vaccine. So she's saying maybe they were talking to you about an amniocentesis and they wanted to give a Tdap. Right. I mean, I agree, though, that maybe we're missing some information to really have a full understanding of, Brother G, what they were asking, because I've never heard of giving a baby a vaccine through the womb, because I can't even see where that would be possible. Mm-hmm. Like if you I can't envision giving an injection in the womb that would go to the baby. That's why I was like, were they saying like give the mama the vaccine so it can get to the baby? And so she's saying that maybe you're thinking about an amniocentesis, and they wanted to give a Tdap, which is a vaccine. A lot of times what they'll do is they want the mama to get the flu vaccine, and they say the way they describe it is if the mom gets the flu vaccine, it will be protection for the baby. The baby will get it passively. So that's what I'm wondering, if it was like that kind of a thing. Like they were like, your wife should get it because then it's going to pass naturally to the baby. Got it. Does anybody have any other questions before we start wrapping up? We've been on this call for an hour and a half, huh, Mr. G? Come on. I mean, we started on CP time, so we did. I'm just like, we definitely been talking for an hour though. Yeah. Somebody is asking me on IG about GBS, saying if a mother is positive for GBS, do you think garlic is an effective treatment if she wants a home birth? It's not that simple, and there's no real research around what helps group B strep GBS from being positive. I think the main thing to know about GBS, and for people who don't know, GBS is an infection that lives in the gut of the mother. We found out in the late 80s, early 90s that the GBS bacteria could get to the baby and babies were dying. And so they started doing GBS tests on every person. They give everybody who's pregnant, if you're in the hospital system, and even if you're not in the hospital system, even home birth midwives will test you for GBS. And the idea is if we test you early, like around 35 weeks, and you're positive, and we treat you either in labor or before you have the baby, we can prevent the baby from getting GBS. From a home birth perspective, there's no good, quote, research. So whether it's probiotics or hibiclins or garlic, there's all sorts of theories and loose research on what helps. In the hospital, they'll do IV antibiotics. The jury is still out on a lot of that. So unfortunately, I can't give a good, solid answer on what's the best way to deal with it. What I would say is from a mama testing positive to a baby getting sick, like there's a continuum. So the mama tests positive over here, the baby gets sick over here. And just because the mama tests positive doesn't mean your baby's going to get sick. Did your water bag break early? Were there a lot of vaginal exams? Did you have a fever? How high was your colonization when they did the testing? Like all of those things also come into play. But do all of the things. Probiotics, garlic. This is what I always say too. What's going to hurt? Is garlic going to stop the GBS? I don't know. But is it going to hurt something? No. Then do some extra garlic. You know what I mean? Is probiotics going to help the GBS? I don't know. But is taking probiotics going to hurt something? Do the probiotics.
Good advice. Good advice. Thank you for that, Nicole. All right. So as we wrap up, I definitely think we got to do another part of this because people had some great insight, things to say today.
Y'all, you keep wanting me to come back, y'all.
You might have to be a regular, Nicole. But as we wrap up, imagine in a perfect world, Black people all get doulas, midwives. They're taking people with them on these visits and everything. What impact do you think that has for us?
Oh, it's all positive, right? It's just like if you about to get jumped at school, but you bring your big brother. What happened? All of a sudden, you ain't getting jumped, right? It's literal. It's that literal. And we have to understand it's that literal. We need our posse with us. Number one, we need to be educated. We need to have the information that we need to have. We need to be able to challenge the system on all levels. I did not mention it. I forgot. The Black Doula Directory. I did mention it a little bit. Yeah, I did mention it. It's it's not brand new, but it is being enhanced and going to be bigger and greater because of our partnership that we have now with Baby Dove. So definitely go to blackdouladirectory.com, find you a doula.
There it is. There it is. Nicole, we appreciate you, man. So much insight today, man. I definitely have to review this myself. You never know if there's another pregnancy in the future.
Hey, like another one going away.
You never know. You never.
Then what your wife say?
She's done. We maxed out at 2, man. But
you maxed out. Okay.
You never know. You never know.
You never know.
But this is great information. Like I said, I wish we had this information before, but I know somebody is going to be getting it right now, and it's going to have a tremendous impact on the way they view their pregnancy and what they do throughout their pregnancy. So definitely appreciate you coming on and just giving us these gems today, man. And like I said, you'll definitely come back at some point.
I appreciate you. Y'all follow me on Instagram, Sista Midwife, Sista Midwife, and all of the things. Thank you, Mr. Simba. And I'm on everywhere, SistaMidwife.com, all the things, Sista Midwife.
Thank you for that.
And happy Mother's Day, yes.
Real quick, Nicole, do you do your programs, some of the programs through Sista Midwife, are they virtual online as well, or?
So I do a birth sister training right now. Our next birth sisters, most people say doulas. I say birth sister. There's a whole history involved in that. But our next doula training starts August 22nd. Registration is open. Payment plans are available. Class starts August 22nd. SistaMidwife.com to get registered. And we will be having a virtual and hybrid event in October called The Art of Birthing. And I'm on social media, and I am working to be more consistent with my lives and public sharing, but I'm not as good as you, Mr. G.
I'm working.
I'm gonna have to connect with you to get a little better where I'm here every week. That's the goal. The goal is a weekly live. I just haven't gotten to the point where I can. Oh, you saw my daughter at the beginning of the call.
Mm-hmm.
She harasses me.
That's what they do. That's what they do, man. But yeah, we're all learning. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming through, tapping in with us.
And thank you, Renee and RD Andre Bell. Thank y'all for saying that. I'm happy that information is effective and informative. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, sir. Everybody we'll definitely be posting on YouTube so you guys could share with people that missed today. And I will share that with you, Nicole, as well.
For sure.
And again, thank you everybody for coming through. We will be back June 3rd with Dr. Kaba Kamene talking about the state of Black education. We might have another special guest as well that day. So that is Saturday, June 3rd. Still working on time, so we'll keep you guys posted. But again, thank you for tapping in with us. Review the program, share it. We are on YouTube now, MasterMine Podcasts on YouTube. And of course, remember, your mind is the most powerful tool in the universe. Therefore, if you can think it, you can do it. If you believe in it, you can be it. And if you fight for it, you can have it. The world is yours. This has been your host, Mr. G, and I will see you next time on MasterMine.
So every day I'm going hard. I'm talking business, bank accounts, and credit cards. And somehow we defeat the odds and making sure that no one starves illegal or